خب برنامه از طریق زوم محمدیه خوش آمدین. فعلا پروگرام ما توسط تلاوت قرآن با آقای عباس وفا شروع میکنیم انشالله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رضوا بأن يكونوا مع الخوالف وطبع على قلوبهم فهم لا يفقهون. لكن الرسول والذين آمنوا معه جاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم وأولئك لهم الخيرات وأولئك هم المفلحون. أعد الله لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها ذلك الفوز العظيم. وجاء المعذرون من الأعراب ليؤذن لهم وقعد الذين كذبوا الله ورسوله سيصيب الذين كفروا منهم عذاب عليم. ليس على الضعفاء ولا على المرضى ولا على الذين لا يجدون ما ينفقون الذين لا يجدون ما ينفقون حرج إذا نصحوا لله ما على المحسنين من سبيل والله غفور رحيم. ولا على الذين إذا ما أتوك لتحملهم قلت لا أجد ما أحملكم عليه تولوا وأعينهم تفيض من الدمع حزنا ألا يجدوا ما ينفقون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. بر محمد و آل بیت محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد. کربلایی عباس جان، یک جهان ممنون. خداوند زنده و داشته باشید. سلام علیکم عباس جان.
آقای نوروزی سلام برسه. ساعتم
خوب
خوبه؟
هستید؟ سعی شما خوب؟ خیرت؟
الحمدلله.
بفرمایید.
اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. ای انیس و مونس شبای تارم یا علی. شب شهادت زهرا سلام الله علیهاست. دلها را بفرستین کنار بستر زهرا سلام الله علیها. ای انیس و مونس شب‌های تارم یا علی. این دم آخر بیان در کنارم یا علی. عقده دارم به دل زین مردمان بی حیا. گوش و بنما ناله های زارم یا علی. تازه جور دشمنان پهلوی من بشکسته شد. شد برون از کف نانا اختیارم یا علی. این حسین و این حسن، این زینبین خسته دل، این عزیزان را به دستت می سپارم یا علی. زهرا سلام الله علیها پسرم خود علی بود. علی جان مرا شبانه غسل بدی، شبانه کفن کن و شبانه دفن کن. چرا یا زهرا علی جان نمیخوام این ظالمین به تشییع جنازم بیاین. علی زهرا سلام الله علیها وصایای خود را یکایک بزد به علی علیه السلام فرمود. علی پسرمش را مخاطب ساخته، عجب نوع سرایی دارد. در دم مرگ و زرایت هر با دل زار با آل مستر گفت باید نه پیامبر ای پسرم امان از جدایی. یا علی عمر من بر سر آمد، قاصد مرگم از در آمد. روز را شب آخر آمد. ای پسرم امان از جدایی. ای شهنشاه مال که امامت از غم من سر در قیامت ای پسرم امان از جدایی من چو رفتم از این دار فانی یا علی بعد مرگم بکن میربانی با یتیمان من تا توانی ای پسرم امان از جدایی از فراق اصل نور عینم در غم و نالم و شورش عینم وقت مردن به فکر حسینم ای پسرم امان از جدایی زینب من یتیم و فگار است بی کس و مسترا خوار زار است او زمان نزد تو یادگار است ای پسرم امان از جدایی ای پسرم امان از جدایی یزید را به جهنم خدا عذابش کن چو مسگداخت سازا دوباره آبش کن صلوات محمد
اللهم صل علی
عذاب میگه قبول
اللهم
باشه
صل علی محمد و آل. تشکر بسیار از حاجی عباس جان.
تشکر از شما همچنین
سلامت باشی.
شبتان خوش
شب شما خوش.
ماشاءالله. حاجی آقا نوروزی سلام علیکم و رحمت الله.
سلام علیکم حاجی آقا شیبانی، خوب هستین؟
الحمدلله خدا را شکر. شما خوب هستین ان شاء الله؟
فضل خدا، فضل
شما
خدا.
خوبه؟ خانواده همه خوب ان شاء الله؟
شکر فضل
قبول
خدا.
باشه. خداوند به شما اجر خیر بده که این برنامه را الحمدلله
سلامت باشه، قبول باشه،
برنامه‌ریزی میکنین.
قبول حق باشه.
سلامت باشه.
بهره میبریم. خدا.
اجازه است؟
بفرمایید. بله.
اعوذ بالله من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبو القاسم مصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، سيما بقية الله في السماوات والأراضين الحجة ابن الحسن روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء وعجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم ومبرم الفرقان العظيم: يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقاعدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. سلامتی آقا امام زمان علیه السلام و برای تعجیل در فرجش صلوات بلند نفرمایید.
اللهم صل على محمد و آل محمد.
در آستانه شهادت حضرت بیبی فاطمه زهرا سلام الله علیها هستیم. این مصیبت بزرگ را خدمت حضرت صاحب العصر و الزمان علیه السلام و همچنان خدمت همه شما خواهران و برادران اسلامی تسلیت عرض کرده از خداوند متعال عاجزانه و برکت وجود حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها پدر، شوهر و فرزندان آن حضرت می خواهیم تا خود ما، فرزندان ما را تا روز قیامت، نسل‌های بعدی ما را خدایا توفیق پیروی از حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها پدر، شوهر و فرزندانش عنایت بفرماید. روانشناسا میفرمایند قبل از آنی که مطالب پیرامون حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها عرض کنم، این مقدمه را لازم دانستم خدمت سروران عزیز عرض کنم. علمای روانشناس میگویند در شکلگیری شخصیت هر انسان سه مسئله بسیار مؤثر است. یکی وراثت یعنی خانواده، دوم محیط و سوم تربیت. حالا همین سه تا را ما در رابطه با حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها که این برنامه امشب و مناسبت ایام شهادت آن حضرت منعقد و برگزاری شده خدمت شما عرض کنیم. وقتی شخصیت حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها را مورد بحث و بررسی قرار میدیم، از نظر وراثت و خانواده، خب پدر حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها همه میدانیم پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام است، یعنی با فضیلت ترین مخلوق در جهان هستی از روز اول آفرینش تا روز قیامت پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام است. اون کسی که خدای تبارک و تعالی در قرآن کریم او را رحمت للعالمین خطاب کرده. حالا در رابطه با فضائل پیامبر اکرم که دیگر روشن و مشخص است، آیات قرآن گواه بر فضائل آن حضرت است. و اما مادر حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها حضرت خدیجه کبری سلام الله علیها است که از این شخصیت کمتر صحبت میشه. واقعا یکی از زنان بسیار با فضیلت و با عظمت حضرت خدیجه کبری سلام الله علیها است. در فضایلش همین بس که اولین زن مؤمنه، اولین خانم که به پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام ایمان آورد حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها از زنها بود و حضرت علی علیه السلام از مردها. و در وقتی حضرت خدیجه کبری سلام الله علیها از دنیا رفتن، پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام اون سال را سال عام الحزن بیان کردن، یعنی سال غم و اندوه. و همینی که حضرت خدیجه کبری سلام الله علیها تمام ثروت و داراییش را در خدمت پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام گذاشت که این جمله را حتما شنیدین که میگن در پیش برده اسلام سه مسئله خیلی اثر داشت. یکی اخلاق زیبای پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام، دوم شجاعت، وفاداری و گذشت و اون شهامت مولای متقیان امیر المؤمنین علی علیه السلام، و سوم ثروت حضرت خدیجه کبری. پس میخواهم مختصر عرض کنم، پس از نظر وراثت حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها دارای چنین پدر و چنین مادر است. از نظر محیط حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها در محیط بزرگ شد که رفت و آمد جبرائیل امین و آوردن آیات وحی بود. محیط چنین محیطه. حالا ممکنه یک کسی هم وراثتش خوب باشه هم محیطش، اما مهم این مربی، این معلم است که این فرزند را، این طفل را رشد و نمو میده، پرورش میده، تعلیم میده. حالا مربی حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها کی هست؟ تا 5 سال حضرت خدیجه کبری سلام الله علیها و بعد از آن پرورش حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها با وجود خود حضرت پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام بوده و دست حضرت رسول اکرم صلی الله علیه و آله و سلم. چنین مربیه که واقعا وقتی ما زندگی حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها را مورد بحث و بررسی و مطالعه قرار میدیم، میبینیم که پیامبر اکرم چقدر در رابطه با رشد و نمو و تعلیم و تربیه حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها دقت داشتن. و عنوان مثال یک نمونه خدمت شما عرض کنم. وقتی حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها که یک مقدار مشکلات داشت و حضرت علی علیه السلام هم برایشان پیشنهاد کردند که پدرت حالا کنیزهایی را در خدمت داره، برو یکی از این کنیزها را به اصطلاح تقاضا کو که پدرت پیامبر اکرم برای تو بده تا در کارهای خانه خدمت کنه. وقتی آمد خدمت پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام این مسئله را مطرح کرد، پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام فرمودند که این کنیزها را من باید نگه دارم و اونها را بعضی اونها را آزاد کنم یا بفروشم تا اینی که به اصطلاح شکم این اصحاب سیر شود. اما و تو ای دخترم یک تحفه دیگر میدهم که از این برتر و بالاتر است. اون تحفه چی است؟ همین تسبیحاتی که ما بعد از هر نماز میخوانیم و منسوب شده به تسبیحات حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها که خیلی در رابطه با خواندن همین تسبیحات که 34 مرتبه الله اکبر، 33 مرتبه سبحان الله، 33 مرتبه الحمدلله، خیلی تاکید شده که حضرت امام جعفر صادق صلوات الله و سلام علیه میفرمایند که این برتر است از 1000 رکعت نماز مستحبی و سنتی. پس این یک مختصر در رابطه با شخصیت حضرت زهرا از نظر خانواده، محیط و مربی. در فضیلت حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها امین بس که پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام که قرآن کریم میگه و ما ینطق عن الهوا ان هو الا وحی یوحی، پیامبر اکرم هیچ سخنی از روی هوا و هوس نمیگه، همه فرمایشات و سخنان پیامبر اکرم دقیق است. در رابطه با حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها خب این را شنیدین که فرمودن به فاطمه تو بضعه منی، فاطمه پاره تن من است. ولی در روایات داره که پیامبر اکرم وقتی حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها وارد خانه می شدن، وارد می شدن بر پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام، پیامبر اکرم 4 عمل، 4 کار را انجام می دادن. خیلی دقیق است. یکی اینه که به استقبال دخترشان ایستاده می شدن. قام الی، به خاطر حضرت زهرا نشسته بودن ایستاده می شدن و حرکت می کردن به طرف او. دیگر اینه که می گفت مرحبا بک، خوش آمدی دخترم فاطمه. سوم اینه که دست او را می بوسید و چهارم اینه که او را همون جایی که خودش نشسته بود و جای خودش حضرت زهرا رو میگفت اینجا بنشین. این یک حرکت پدر با هر دختر نیست، این فضیلت و شخصیت زهرای مطهره را میرسانه. حالا روایات و آیات زیادی در رابطه با حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها وارد شده. همه معصومین در رابطه با حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها مطالبی دارن. از جمله یک سخن از حضرت امام حسن عسکری علیه السلام خدمت شما عرض کنیم. این سخن واقعا خیلی مطلب مهم و بزرگی است. حضرت امام حسن عسکری علیه السلام میفرماید نحن حجج الله علی خلقه و جدتنا فاطمه حجت علینا. خیلی زیباست، خیلی مطلب مهمه. میفرماید ما ائمه، امامان، یعنی 12 امام، حضرت امام علی تا حضرت حجت، یا بگوییم از حضرت امام حسن عسکری، امام حسن مجتبی تا حضرت حجت، این 11 امام ما حجت خدا هستیم بر همه مخلوقات، یعنی همه باید از ما پیروی کنند. اما مادر ما حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها حجت علینا، بر ما حجت. این چی فضیلتی است که حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها داره. عرض کردم آیات و روایات فراوان است، ولی میخواهم یک نکته‌ای که از حضرت زهرا انشاءالله در این ایام شهادت این شخصیت بزرگوار درس بگیریم. این خیلی مهمه. حالا مثلا در رابطه با شهادتش روایات مختلف، 75 روز، 95 روز، خب اینهایش خیلی مهم نیست. مهم اینه که ما از حضرت زهرا چی یاد میگیریم، چی درس میگیریم و اون را در زندگی امروز ما پیاده کنیم. چرا؟ برای اینه که حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها و فرمایش پیامبر اکرم الگوست، اسوه است. همانطوری که خود پیامبر اکرم را قرآن کریم به عنوان اسوه و الگو معرفی کرده، لقد کان لکم فی رسول الله اسوه حسنه. پیامبر اکرم اهل بیتش را، یعنی حضرت زهرا و 12 امام، این 13 معصوم را پیامبر اکرم بعد از خودش اینها و قرآن را به عنوان الگو در اون حدیث معروف و شریف ثقلین بیان کرده. خب حالا حضرت زهرا به عنوان الگو و اسوه، ببینیم حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها چی درس میگیریم. برادران و خواهران بزرگوار، این را خدمت شما عرض کنم. ما که الگو میگیم، بعضا ممکنه بگوید که خب 1400 سال، تقریبا نزدیک 1400 سال از زندگی حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها گذشته. سبک زندگی حضرت زهرا تا سبک زندگی ما خیلی تفاوت داره. بله، ما وقتی بررسی میکنیم الگو میگیم، نه به این معنا که همون به اصطلاح ظرفهای غذایی را که حضرت زهرا داشت ما هم همونها را تهیه کنیم، همون ظروف گلی، یا به اصطلاح با همون وسایلی که حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها یا پیامبر اکرم ائمه از یک جا به جای دیگه میرفتن، خب اون وقت به اصطلاح از حیوانات از قاتل استفاده میکرد، بگوییم که ما هم همون کار را بکنیم. در این رابطه عرض نمیکنم که ما از اونها به اصطلاح تأسی کنیم، پیروی کنیم. نه، تأسی و پیروی ما از اون بخش زندگی اونهاست که همین امروز هم ما به اون نیاز داریم و اون ثابت است تا روز قیامت تغییر نمیکنه. ببینید خدمت شما عرض میکنم با عنوان مثال صداقت و راستی آیا فرق کرده؟ خب همون صداقت و راستی که در زمان حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها مطرح بود امروز هم مطرح است. و مثلا امانت داری، خب همون امانت داری که در زمان حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها مطرح بود امروز هم است. اخلاص، معنویت، وفای به عهد، حیا، اینها مطالب است که ما امروز هم به اینها نیاز داریم. حالا به عنوان نمونه امشب دو تا را مختصرا خدمت شما عرض میکنم با ختم صلوات. یکی از درس هایی که ما از حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها میگیریم به عنوان الگو و اسوه ما، این اصولی که در زندگی حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها وجود داشت. یکی از اونها معنویتی که در زندگی حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها، این موضوع خیلی اهمیت داره برادران و خواهران. موضوع معنویت، ارتباط ما با خدا. ببینین یک نمونه عرض کنم در تاریخ دارد که حضرت پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام یک روز وارد خانه حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها شد. دید حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها روی پایش، حالا یا امام حسن یا امام حسین یکی از اطفالش روی پایش است، از اون طرف دستاس میکنه. دستاس یعنی به اصطلاح حالا یا جو یا گندم آسیا میکنه و از اون طرف هم قرآن میخونه. ببینید وقتی حضرت پیامبر بزرگوار اسلام این حالت حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها را دیدن، فرمودن زهرای من در این دنیا مشکلات را میبینی، گرفتاری ها، رنج ها، اما بدان که زندگی زیبایی بعد از این دنیا در انتظار توست. در عالم آخرت اونجا بهترین زندگی را خواهی داشت در عالم آخرت و بعد از در قیامت. اما ببینیم چی درس میگیریم از این حرکت حضرت زهرا. اول اینه که حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها در جواب پدرشان عرض کردن الحمدلله، من خدا را شکرگزار هستم. نه اینه که شکوه و شکایت کنن که پدر جان ببینید که من چیا دارم، چقدر مشکلات دارم، این همه رنج و گرفتاری. نه، با همون زندگی بسیار ساده، با اون همه مشکلات و گرفتاری که ام طفل بزرگ میکردن، ام گندم یا جو را آسیا میکردن، در همین حال قرآن هم میخواندن. این چی درسی است که برای همه ما میدن؟ حضرت زهرا الگوست برای همه ما، مخصوصا خواهران و مادران. یعنی اینه که اگر مادرانی با اصطلاح در آشپزخانه مسئول پختن غذا هستن، خب همین با همین زبانشان سوره قل هو الله بخوانن، خیلی اثر داره. الحمد بخوانن، انا اعطینا بخوانن، همین سوره هایی را که از حفظ هستن حالا کار هم میکنن، آشپزی هم میکنن، قرآن هم بخوانین. برادران و خواهران، همه ما از حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها درس بگیریم، انس با قرآن، انس با قرآن داشته باشیم. همه شما بزرگواران میدانین حالا بخوایم فضایل حضرت زهرا رو مطرح کنیم، اول اینکه وقت اجازه نمیده، دوم اینه که بنده تواناییش ندارم. این همه فضایل، اقیانوس فضایل هستن اینا. اما ما چی از اینها یاد بگیریم؟ مبادا روزها بگذره ما یک بار قرآن را باز نکنیم، مبادا هفته ها بگذره یک ختم، ماها بگذره یک ختم قرآن نداشته باشه. انس با قرآن و قرآن را میخونیم به مفاهیمش، به معنایش، حداقل ترجمه این قرآن میخونیم، یک ترجمهش هم بخونیم. همین حمد و سوره هایی را که میخونیم ترجمه قرآن هم بخونیم که یک چیز انشالله از این قرآن کریم، این نعمت بزرگی را که خدا به ما عنایت کرده بهره ببریم. این یک نمونه از درس هایی که از حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها میگیرم. یک درس دیگرش اینه که برای، عرض کردم، حضرت زهرا برای همه ما الگوست، مخصوصا برای مادران. ببینیم در حالات حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها دارد که حضرت امام حسن مجتبی علیه السلام فرزند بزرگشان میگه شاید الله در حدود این صحبت را که میکنه شاید در حدود 5-6 ساله بودن حضرت امام حسن مجتبی علیه السلام. میگه مادرم مرا میفرستاد به مسجد، بعد میگفت اونجا که رفتی گوش کن که پیامبر اکرم چی میگه، بعدم که آمدی خانه این را برای من تعریف کن. خب ما از این چی درس میگیریم؟ چند تا درس در همین حرکت حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها برای ما نهفته است. اول اینه که ما تشویق کنیم فرزندان ما را، اولادهای ما را. پدران و مادران، بزرگترین مسئولیت ما در رابطه با اولادهای ماست که در این کشورهای غیر اسلامی، در این محیط دور از غیر دینی بزرگ میشن. خیلی توجه کنیم، خیلی دقت کنیم، مسئولیت بزرگی داریم. قرآن کریم میگه قو انفسکم و اهلیکم نارا، خودتان و اهل بیتتان را از آتش جهنم نجات بدین. جابر ابن عبدالله انصاری سوال کرد از پیامبر اکرم که چطور اولادهای خود نجات بدیم؟ پیامبر اکرم فرمودن با امر به معروف نهی از منکر، یعنی اونها را مسائل دینی را یاد بدین. حضرت امام سجاد علیه السلام در حقوق فرزندان میفرماید که از حقوقی که اولادها بر پدران و مادران داره که اینها را ادب اسلامی کنیم، اینها را تشویق کنیم. ببینید حضرت زهرا چند تا درس. اول اینی که ما یاد میگیریم که باید اولادها را تشویق کنیم به مسائل دینی و طرف رفتن به مراکز دینی. حالا جاهایی که به خاطر این مشکل کرونا مراکز دینی بسته هست، لااقل این برنامه هایی که الحمدلله ما داریم در همین زوم و یوتیوب، اینها این اولادها رو تشویق کنیم که در این برنامه ها شرکت کنن، مسائل دینی را گوش کنن. الحمدلله الان که دیگه به اصطلاح هیچ اکسکیوز و معذرتی وجود نداره. الحمدلله پر است این سایت ها و این یوتیوب اینها از همین برنامه های دینی و اسلامی. با اولادهای خود کار کنیم. کلاس های قرآن الحمدلله در همه جا، در اکثر جایا، حالا همه جا اگر نگویم در اکثریت جاها، تا جایی که بنده اطلاع دارم الحمدلله کلاس های قرآن هست. در همین زوم محمدیه هم الحمدلله ما کلاس های قرآن روزای سه‌شنبه و پنجشنبه داریم. حالا میگم اینجا در هر جایی که کلاس های قرآن باشه یا در همین کلاس های قرآن این فرزندان خود ما را بیاریم، تشویق کنیم که اینها بیاین مسائل دینی خود را یاد بگیرن. پس یک درس این که فرزندان را تشویق کنیم، اولادها را در رابطه با یاد گرفتن مسائل دینی. دوم اینه که میگن وقتی فرستادیشان را به مسجد یا حالا بگین از طریق زوم وقتی برنامه نمیبینن دیگه، مبادا در هر سخنرانی بزرگان که الحمدلله متوجه هستن، این اولادها هم مبادا که به اصطلاح در تلفن خود یا در آیپاد خود یا در اینها مصروف باشن. ببینید حضرت زهرا به امام مجتبی میگه که فرزندم وقتی به مسجد رفتی خوب سخنان پیغمبر را گوش کن که وقتی خانه آمدی من از تو پرسان میکنم که پیغمبر چی گفت. ما هم بپرسیم از این اولادها که خب امشب که مثلا این سخنرانی رو شنیدی، you listen to this speech, please tell me the summary of this speech. یک مختصر از این سخنرانی که مثلا حالا در فارسی، اگر فارسی بفهم به انگلیسی بوده، این رو گوش کردی چی گفت این سخنور. و بعد وقتی امام مجتبی به خانه میآید، حضرت زهرا از او سوال میکنه که فرزندم چی گفت پیامبر. این خودش یک درس بزرگی است برای پدران و مادران که تشویق کنین اولادهایتان را برای سخن گفتن، صحبت کردن. نه اینی که اولادها وقتی میخوان صحبت کنن یک گزارش بدن از مکتب، از اسکول، از کلاس های خود، یک صحبت بخواید بکنن بگید ما حوصله نداریم، بابا دیگه چقدر صحبت میکنی، چقدر حرف میزنی، من کار دارم، من حوصله. نه، این خیلی مطلب. از همه کارها رو دور بگذارید. یک شب اگر به اصطلاح غذای بسیار چند رقم پخته نکردین پروا نداره. مهم تربیه فرزندان است. وقتی این اولاد ما صحبت میکنه او را تشویق کنیم، او را جرأت بدیم به صحبت کردن. اینه که درس هایی که ما از حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها میگیریم. حالا مطالب دیگر هم نوشته بودم که در رابطه با رضایت که یکی از القاب حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها راضیه است، دیگر از اسامیشان مرضیه است. از اینها چی درس میگیریم که دیگه میترسم وقت طولانی شود و انشالله حجت الاسلام و المسلمین حاج آقا شیخ بلال حسین جان هم انشالله که ما را به فیض میرسانند. بناهن یک جنبندی از صحبت امشب خدمت شما داشته باشم، اینه که اولا فضایل حضرت زهرا هم از نظر خانواده، وراثت، هم از نظر محیط و هم از نظر مربی به اصطلاح ما شما تابترین و درجه اعلاست 100%. و ثانیاً اینه که سخنان پیامبر اکرم در رابطه با فضیلت فضایل حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها فراوان است. زهرا رو میگه ام ابیها بضعة منی، فاطمه تو مادر پدری، تو توته به اصطلاح ما و شما پاره تن من هستی. و اما درس هایی که از حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها میگیریم، عرض شد که درس معنویت اینه که ما با قرآن کریم انس داشته باشیم، با برنامه‌های دینی، و دیگه در رابطه با تربیه فرزند خود که او را تشویق کنیم به مسائل دینی و گوش بدیم، حوصله شنیدن سخنان فرزندان را داشته باشیم. خداوند انشاءالله برای همه ما توفیق پیروی از قرآن و حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها پدر، شوهر و فرزندانش عنایت بفرماید با گفتن صلوات بر محمد و آل محمد. اللهم صل علی محمد و آل محمد. خب ایام شهادت حضرت زهراست. یک توسل مختصر و التماس دعا. صلی الله علیک یا فاطمه الزهرا یا قرة عین الرسول یا سیدتنا و مولاتنا، انا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله، اشفي لنا عند الله. سینه‌ای از معرفت گنجینه اسرار بود، که سزاوار فشار آن در و دیوار بود. وصیت کرد حضرت زهرا به علی علیه السلام، یا امیر المؤمنین مرا شبانه غسل بده، شبانه کفن کن، شبانه مرا به خاک بسپار. علی علیه السلام با وصایای حضرت زهرا عمل کرد. اما امیری که او را به خاک سپرد، وقتی خاک روی قبر حضرت زهرا انداخت، حال حضرت علی علیه السلام دگرگون شد تا آنجایی که تاریخ دارد. عباس عموی علی علیه السلام آمد زیر بغل های حضرت علی علیه السلام را گرفت. اینقدر مصیبت شهادت حضرت زهرا بر امیر المؤمنین سایر بود. اما یک جمله و التماس دعا بگویم. یا امیر المؤمنین، شما با اینه که حضرت زهرا سلام الله علیها را به خاک سپردین، اما اینطور حالتان دگرگون شد. اما چی حالی داشت حضرت زینب وقتی از تن زینبیه میدید که سر از بدن برادرش امام حسین جدا میکنن. اگر کشتن چرا خاکش نکردن، کفن بر جسم سجاد کش نکردن. فسیامین ظلموا أيام القلب ينقلبون. اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج، اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. برای تعجیل در فرج مولای ما حضرت حجت علیه السلام صلوات بلند.
اللهم صل علی محمد. قبول باشه. تشکر بیشتر از زیاد آجی آقا. واقعا فیض بردیم. خداوند سایه شما را سر ما کم نکنه.
زنده باشین. تشکر. سلامت باشین. شما انشالله خداوند شما را، وجود شما را و همه عزیزانی که زحمت میکشین برنامه را تهیه و تدارک میبینن، خیر و برکت، عافیت و سلامتی عنایت بفرمایید.
سلامت و جور تیار باشین.
التماس دعا داریم که ما یک برنامه دیگه هم دارم، باید یک دیگه هم ان شاء الله از شما و عزیزان التماس دعا دارم. از حاج آقای حجت الاسلام حاج آقا شیخ بلال جانم التماس دعا دارم.
محتاج دعا شما هستم حاج آقا.
سلام علیکم حاجی شیخ بلال.
علیکم السلام و رحمت الله.
حاج بلال جان سلام علیکم. حاج آقا خوب هستین ان شاء الله؟ حال شما خوبه؟ ادام الله اجورکم. تقبل الله ان شاء الله. التماس دعا داریم از شما.
دعا شما هستم.
خداوند شما تشکر از اینکه تشریف آوردین، دعوت محمدی را قبول کردین. ان شاء الله که هر چیز زودتر به خیر از نزدیک در خدمت شما باشیم.
الهی امین ان شاء الله.
التماس دعا داریم. بفرمایید.
In tonight's English program, we have Sheikh Bilal, who will speak to all of us in English. We thank Sheikh Bilal very much for speaking.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: فاطمة بضعة مني، يرضى الله برضاها ويغضب الله بغضبها. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكر استشهاد السيدة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. May Allah increase in our reward for the commemoration of the martyrdom of the daughter of Rasulullah, the leader of the women of the world, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha. If you notice, what's interesting is, in the religion of Islam, there are 3 sets of dates for the commemoration of the martyrdom of the daughter of Rasulullah. One date specifies is that Sayyidah Fatima became shaheed, left this world 40 days after the death of the Holy Prophet. A second set of traditions proposes that she became shaheed 75 days after the death of the Holy Prophet, which is the days that we're commemorating now. This is the commemoration 75 days after the shahadat of the Holy Prophet. The third set of dates notes that she passed away 95 days after the shahadat of the Holy Prophet. There's some question, and the focus of our conversation today is the question about why do we commemorate 3 sets of dates for the shahadat of Sayyidah Zahra. Now, this question is one that, while there may not be a formal answer to it, we can see the wisdom and we can see the benefit that we attain from this series of commemorations and make a conclusion that it serves a purpose, therefore we commemorate 3 times. There are other things in Islam where their reality has been hidden from us, and that we spend the time in talab, in search of that reality. The most famous of these, that, for example, we spend time in search of that, or the reality of that item, is Laylatul Qadr. That Laylatul Qadr is one of those special moments in time where Allah Himself describes and says in the Holy Quran, تَنَزُّلُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالرُّوحُ فِيهَا بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهِمْ مِنْ كُلِّ أَمْرٍ. That this statement that Allah says, on that time of Laylatul Qadr, I send down the spirits and the angels and set aright the affairs and fulfill all the commandments in this time. And the reality of the significance of this time is so important that it has been spread out for us amongst 3 days, so that, not that it's unknown to us, but that more time is spent in dedication to searching and to striving for Allah's pleasure. The interesting factor is that one of the ta'wil, one of the hidden meanings of Laylatul Qadr is Bibi Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha, and we also search for her date of shahadat in 3 separate dates. Another, for example, hidden reality from us is that Allah says that the day of Jum'ah, the day of Friday, has within it a special anointed time in which Allah answers any request that's given to Him. That on Friday there exists a particular period of time, and we don't know exactly what time of day that is, but there exists a particular period of time that if you beseech Allah in that day, your hajat will be fulfilled. Therefore, it's very recommended that on the day of Friday, you make dua, you recite supplications, you ask for Allah's forgiveness, you ask for the benefits. One of the great du'as that we recite on the day of Friday, and that we should make it a habit amongst our families, to, if not recite it ourselves, at least listen to, is Du'a Nudba. And Du'a Nudba, the name comes from Nadb, to call out, to cry out, to anguish after something. Is that calling out for Imam Zaman? Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that this searching for, asking for Imam Zaman is in this Du'a Nudba, that's from the great mustahabbat of the day of Friday, to make this the supplication that we make, that maybe by our supplication Allah will hasten His reappearance to us. The point is that Allah has hidden some affairs from us and we search after them. And amongst those hidden affairs is this connection and correlation to Bibi Fatima Zahra through the commemoration and through the grief that we have over her shahad. So when we discuss why do we have 3 dates of shahadat, there are 3 aspects that we need to take a look at. The first being, One is the importance of Sayyidah Zahra. One of the points that we could understand by the statement, the importance of Sayyidah Zahra, is to take a look and see of how within the variety of cultures that exist within Islam, the role of women is vastly different. And it may even in some cultures be deemed that, for example, it's inappropriate to discuss the affairs of the ladies. For example, when we look at the waqia of Karbala, there are narrations that dispute and debate both the number of women that were present amongst the Sibaya, that all of the prisoners that were taken from Karbala to Sham, how many were there, which women were present, which daughters of Imam Hussein, which daughters of Imam Hassan, who were the ladies that were present. And on the basis of this, the argument could be made that it's against the hijab of women that their affairs should be discussed openly. However, the reality is that the lessons that we learn from these women are not reliant on understanding the number of women that were present, but rather the message that they conveyed. So it's important for us to discuss the affairs of women. And the same is true of Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha, that this great personality, this great individual that was present amongst us and is the leader of the women of the world, it's important that her affairs be discussed, her role and significance be discussed. The position of women within Islam should be discussed in detail. Therefore, it is significant and important that we don't relegate the commemoration of Sayyidah Fatima to one day, but rather it's something that has repetition and comes up so that the role of women is something that stays under constant debate and discussion, and it's something that stays within our forefront of thought that we need to address, learn about, and accommodate and make sure that our daughters, our mothers, our husbands, our brothers, our sons are well aware that Islam signifies and raises the status of women, and that how they should be treated and dedicated within society is an important discussion. Therefore, there is no better example than to spend at least 3 occasions to discuss what we learn from Bibi Fatima salamullahi alayha. In this, we have lessons and teaching from the most perfect aspect of her personality that will teach us about the relationships between father and daughter, between husband and wife, between mother and child, between lady and society, between a pious woman and how she interacts with her environment, her responsibilities, her rights, her roles. And anytime we discuss Sayyidah Fatima, there is nothing there but perfection for us to learn from. However, the first point that we could make in response to this question, why do we discuss the Shahadat of Sayyidah Fatima 3 times within the year? The first answer is to make sure that no one from within the true religion of Islam denigrates or reduces the status of women in Islam. That by discussing and debating the role of Sayyidah Fatima, and by understanding and bringing to the forefront the discussion of Sayyidah Fatima, that we make sure that the example and the ideal of women within Islam is present, is discussed, is commemorated, and not relegated to the secrets of history. But it's an important part of history, and we make sure that it's a part of our life, our children's lives, and that they are never taught that women are not a significant part of Islam. This would be the first aspect. The second, where we want to spend a good portion of our discussion, is the role and the relationship. The reason that we have 3 dates of Shahadat is to give importance to this personality of Sayyidah Fatima, because of her unique relationship to our holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. What I mean by this, and to understand this, we see the statement of how the holy Prophet described Bibi Fatima himself. And that's the statement of our holy Prophet that we began our majlis with. Fatima bad'atum minni, yaradallahu biridaha وَيَغْضَبَ اللَّهُ بِغَضَبِهَا. This statement, this famous statement of our Holy Prophet gives us insight into a great depth about who Bibi Fatima really was. And this statement gives us the importance that anything that attaches us to her is important that we stay attached to it, because she is unique by the way the Holy Prophet has described her. To translate the statement very briefly, because I apologize, some things you take for granted, right? Our Holy Prophet, he says, Fatima is a piece of me. Fatima bad'atun minni. Fatima is a piece of me. Yarad Allahu bi radaha wa yaghdab Allahu bi ghadabiha. That Allah is pleased when Fatima is pleased, and Allah is angered when Fatima is angered. This one statement is so profound in its depth of trying to teach us how unique and special Bibi Fatima is. When we see, and let's break this apart. The first statement that we see the Holy Prophet makes is that the Prophet says that Fatima is a piece of me. Now, literally, bad'atun minni would not just translate that, for example, she's associated with me. No, she's literally a piece of me. This explanation that Fatima is a piece of me is a very significant point. There are two different ways that we can understand the impact of this statement that Fatima is a piece of me. One aspect, when we understand this, we see that Bibi Fatima, when the Holy Prophet describes that she's a piece of me, she possesses certain attributes that are unique to Nabuwwat, but they are replicated and present in Bibi Fatima. How? One of the unique attributes that a prophet possesses is the ability to speak and interact with the malaika, to be able to see the malaika, to receive wahi from Allah that comes down from the malaika. A unique aspect in all of creation is that the prophets of Allah are the connection between earth and heaven, and they are the ones who bring a message to present to the people. They receive a wahi. One of the differences between imamat and nabuwwat is the receiving of revelation. While an imam is the connection between Allah and humanity on this earth, an imam doesn't bring a revelation from Allah to society. The imam protects, preserves, and teaches the revelation that comes to the Nabi, but doesn't bring anything new from himself. Which is why, when we look at the role and the significance of our A'imma alayhimus salam, from Imam Ali ilal Imam al-Zaman ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif, all of them don't add anything new to the religion of Islam. They don't bring in new laws or new verses of the Quran. All they do is they explain how the Quran and the religion of Islam apply and interact with society. They educate us about the revelation of Rasulullah, and they teach us about it. No new wahi is given to them. A Nabi, on the other hand, is the one who receives revelations from Allah, who receives unique messages from Allah. And one of the attributes of Bibi Fatima Zahra is her title as Muhaddatha, the one to whom is spoken to. Tells us that one of the attributes that was unique, that was present in Bibi Fatima, that while she wasn't a Nabi, that the angels came and spoke to her and gave to her messages and revelations from Allah as well too. The greatest example of this that shows the concept that Fatima bad'atun minni, that the attribute present within Nabuwwat, an aspect of it is present within Bibi Fatima, is what we know as what's being called as Mushaf Fatima. Mushaf Fatima is a unique revelation that was given to Bibi Fatima, the book of Fatima. Our narrations teach us, and Imam Jafar as-Sadiq has a lengthy explanation about this that he explains and he elaborates. He says that after the shahadat of Rasulullah, the sorrow of Bibi Fatima was so great that to give her some comfort, Allah had sent Jibreel to her to bring to her a revelation. Now they said, what was this revelation? And Imam Sadiq explained that this is called Mushaf Fatima. They said, what is Mushaf Fatima? What is the book of Fatima? And the Imam explains, he says, the book of Bibi Fatima is a book that is 3 times the length of the Holy Quran, yet it does not contain anything from the Holy Quran in it. Meaning it's a completely different revelation, it's a completely different discussion. And I said, Yabna Rasulullah, what is in this book of Bibi Fatima then? Then Imam explains that within the book of Bibi Fatima, while it is not from the Quran, it includes information of everything that came from the beginning until the end of time. That within it is knowledge that was uniquely sent for Bibi Fatima to give her a comfort, and within it were included all of the affairs that had happened before and that will happen in the future. And the people asked, Ibn Rasulullah, may we see this book? Do we have access to this book? Is this available to us? And the Imam replies that no, rather it is something that is preserved and kept until the time of the 12th Imam, Sahibul Asri was Zaman, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. And it will be one of the miracles that the Imam possesses with him that will be a demonstration of the authentication that he is truly the Imam, because he is the possessor of this book, as was dedicated and dictated to Bibi Fatima. And this book, uniquely in its additional descriptions, it's noted that, for example, it is what was revealed to Bibi Fatima and written in the hand of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and it is something that's along with the tabarrukat of Nabuwat that are passed down from Imam to Imam, is passed from each Imam to the next, along with, for example, the banner of Rasulullah, the armor of Rasulullah, the ta'abut that was given to the Bani Israel, the shirt of Nabi Yusuf, the staff of Nabi Musa. All of these tabarrukat and the associations that are uniquely associated with the divine authority of Allah on this earth are possessions that are passed from one Imam to the next, and they are a demonstration of the authority of the validity of the authority of the Imam on this earth. Throughout history, there have been imposters who have claimed to be the divine representation and the authority of Allah on this earth. One of the ways that we authenticate and know who truly is the authority of Allah on this earth is the possession of these items by the individual. So one of the ways that we'll be able to recognize our 12th Imam is by his possession of these items, his possession of these tabarrukat and these items that are exclusively given to the divine authority of Allah on this earth. So the first thing that we take a look at is the relationship to the Holy Prophet that Bibi Fatima possesses, that's explained by the statement, Fatima bad'atum minni, that Fatima is a piece of me, is this aspect that Bibi Fatima has the attribute of receiving communication from the angels and receiving wahi from Allah. And that this explains her unique status of when the Prophet says that she is a piece of me. Another way that we could understand this aspect of Bibi Fatima being a piece of the Holy Prophet, which is also shows her significance and the greatness of her status, is that Bibi Fatima, as the part of Rasulullah, is the one who joins the nur of Imamat and Nabuwat after it was split. You see, the light that Allah has dictated, the spiritual light of Nabuwat and Imamat, was joined together and put in the backbone of Nabi Adam alayhi salam. And that this nur of Nabuwat and Imamat continued joined together through all of these personalities that are in history of the great prophets of Allah, until it came to the grandfather of Rasulullah, Abdul Muttalib, where the nur was split into the 2 sons, Imran and Abdullah. Abdullah being the father of Rasulullah, and Imran being the one that we know and we discussed today as Hazrat Abu Talib. And the nur of Nabuwat and Imamat was separated into these 2 individuals. The aspect of this light of Imamat, this divine guidance being present in these personalities, in these Imams and in these prophets, is something we even dedicate and we know about when we recite ziyarat. أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها. This statement, when we recite the ziyarat of whether it's Rasulullah, Imam Ali, Imam Hussein, or all of the Aimma alayhimus salam, is something that explains to us that we swear, and we say that we swear that you are the pure light of Allah in the purified backbones of men and in the purified wombs of your mothers, and that you have never once been touched by the impurity of ignorance. This is an explanation of the status of this nur that Allah has given that lies in the lineage of the Ahlul Bayt, and that they have this pure lineage. But when the nur of Nabuwat and Imamat split, there had to be something that brings it back for the rest of the A'immah alayhimus salam and joins these anwar again. That had to be a purified personality, that had to be a pure individual whose piety and character was so superior that it could rejoin the nur of Imamat and Nabuwat to pass down to the rest of the Imams. In this, we see that Bibi Fatima is the possessor because she is part of Rasulullah, of that nur of Nabuwat, that through her marriage to Imam Ali, these two anwar are joined again, and the nur of the Ahlul Bayt continues with possession of the light of prophethood and imamat, giving the guidance to the rest of humanity. This is a very significant and mighty point, that the status of Bibi Fatima is the one who will possess and join the light of Nabuwat to the light of Imamat, of Imam Ali alayhi salam. In this, there are many hidden meanings as well too, but the least that we see is that when Rasulullah makes the statement, Fatima bada'atu minni, that Fatima is a part of me, that one of the indications that we receive is that she is the one who will take and has the ability to possess the nur of Nabuwat and then connect it to the nur of Wilaya and give it to the purity of the next generations. And we see this in the statements of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam themselves, where we see famously our 8th Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Radha alayhi salam makes the comment, and he says, Nahnu hujjatullahi ala al-ard. We are the authority of Allah on this earth. Wa ummuna Fatima hujja alayna. And that our mother Fatima is Allah's authority over us. It shows the unique status and the azamat of Bibi Fatima, that Bibi Fatima is the authority and the source and the spring by which all of the 11 Imams come, and the authority of Allah is mastered on this earth. This shows her great superiority and why the Holy Prophet designates her as a piece of himself. So one of the aspects, and before we haven't finished yet the discussion around this hadith of the Holy Prophet, but the first half of this hadith itself is something that we could spend even more time upon, even have a greater discussion about, that what does it mean when Bibi Fatima is a part of Rasulullah? Why is this such a significant and important statement? There is even more that we could spend in time on discussing and elaborating upon this. But for the brevity of time, we look at these two examples. One, the aspect that she is muhaddatha, that she receives revelation, shows us the significance of her being a part of the Holy Prophet, and that two, she is the route by which the nur of Nabuwat and Wilayat is joined again to pass the authority to the rest of the Imams, and their authority springs forth from Bibi Fatima, and which is why she is known as the authority and the hujjah over the A'immah, all of them, all of her sons. The second half of this statement is a very curious statement that's made, where the Holy Prophet says, يَرَضَ اللَّهُ بِرَضَاهَا وَيَغْضَبَ اللَّهُ بِغَضَبِهَا. That the translation of this again is that Allah is pleased by her pleasure and Allah is angered by her anger. This statement often is considered, for example, to be a poetic statement, something that some people would argue and say, هَذَا mahal, this is impossible. And the argument is presented that maybe this was, for example, just a poetic, or what's called mujamila. Mujamila is that statement that someone makes, to honor and to respect you, but it really has no place in this world. For example, in the Arabic language, one of the statements is ala ra'si, on my head, ala aini, on my eyes. Now, it literally doesn't mean that you're going to pick up somebody and put them on your head or put them on your eyes. But the significance is, for example, a demonstration of the great authority that they possess, or that how important and significant they are to you. But our Prophet is not a normal person. He doesn't say things just to say them. And the reality of when our Prophet speaks is that it has some truth to its center. The problem that people have with this statement is that when we often look at the pleasure of Allah, it's not that Allah is looking for our pleasure, but rather we are looking for Allah's pleasure. That the satisfaction of the creation is in the satisfaction of the Creator. That where our Creator is happy, there we are happy. Where Allah says this is a good thing, we agree this is a good thing. There is nothing that exists that, for example, we say it's a good thing and Allah says, oh, okay, good idea, we'll follow your example in that. Which is why some people find this statement to be contradictory to reality and they say, how is that possible? But for us to understand that when the Prophet makes this statement, that there's a reality to it and a truth to it, we have to understand the concept of what the role of Bibi Fatima was. To understand this, we go back to a fundamental of the composition of man, that man is made of a body and a spirit. And our goal in life is to balance these two aspects, that the body and the spirit both must be addressed in our creation, and both have a significance of our ability in this world, and both have a role within the religion of Islam. Some of the aspects of the actions that we perform are associated with our body, and others are associated with our spirit. And Allah has differentiated these two by discussing them in different statements. When Allah discusses the material realm, when Allah discusses the physical body, He refers to this as alim khalq, the realm of creation. That these are material aspects that can be sensed by the five senses and that they can be manipulated, modified, and that there's a process of their coming into existence that takes time and it goes through a process that you can acknowledge, see, and go through. So everything that exists within the material world, while it is the miracle of Allah's right that He has to create, He's allowed us to see its process of creation by showing us step by step. Which is why, for example, the birth of a child is a miracle from Allah. But we can follow the entire process by which a child comes into this world and know every phase and every step. And Allah has given us the right that because it is alim khalq, that it is the realm of creation, that we can manipulate, interact, work with it. This is alim khalq. The second is alim al-amr, or the command of Allah. The command of Allah is something that Allah says, إِنَّمَا إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُن فَيَكُونُ. That if Allah wants something, He says to it, be, and it is. That if Allah commands a thing to come into existence, it does. Alim al-amr is that realm of Allah's where He commands something and it comes into existence, which is what the soul is from. That the soul is not something that has anything that can be modified or measured or adjusted through the physical senses. We have nothing that shows us what the spirit looks like, how big it is, how little it is, how much it weighs, where it's located, where it's not. None of these aspects in the soul are available to us because it is from that type of Allah's creation that comes from His command. These two entities, when they combine together, the command of Allah, Amr Allah, and Khalq Allah, when both come together, that's how a human being comes into existence. Which is why we say that the address and the completion of a human being is to address both aspects of these of a human being. A complete human being is body and soul. Not to sidetrack too much, but this is why, for example, when the statement is made, you can't buy happiness, it discusses the fact that happiness is not simply a physical presence that you can possess and attain. It also has to have a spiritual element behind it, such that it addresses both parts of a human being, the physical entities and the spiritual entities, the combination of which produces the concept of happiness. This is why, the same way that Allah has created these two realms, creation and command, Khalq and Amr, and He has given us guidance through both of these, such He has also created Hidayatul Khalq and Hidayatul Amr. Guidance from the Khalq, Khalqiyya, from the created ways, and Hidayah Amriya, guidance from the spiritual ways. The guidance of the spirit, physical ways, hidayah khalqiyya, refers to all of those tools that exist that our five senses interact with, that can bring us closer to Allah, that can bring us in the idea of understanding that Allah exists. The current majlis that we're having, the conversation that we're having, is considered hidayah khalqiyya because it involves an individual who is the creation of Allah, presenting content by utilizing both his voice, his tongue, his mouth, his brain, and the tools that are in front of us, whether it's the microphone, the camera, the computer, the internet, all of these physical materials that are then used to transition guidance from Allah or guidance about Allah to the listener, who in turn uses a variety of tools, whether it's internet, the computer, the TV, his ears, his brain, all of these tools that are required to take an item and knowledge from one aspect and present it to another, we say is the ability for guidance to exist from one source and transition to another. And this is hidayah khalqiyya, that this is the guidance that's associated through the created processes. The second aspect is known as hidayah amriyya, or that hidayah that comes from the command of Allah, that comes through the spiritual means of Allah. This spiritual guidance, this guidance in amriyya, refers to the certain types of guidance that are possible to be given to people without the necessity of communicating or utilization of tools, but simply rather the exposure to the spiritual presence of the source of guidance. When we look in history, we see the example of personalities like Abu Dhar, Salman, Miqdad, Ammar ibn Yasir, all of these and the others, Qambar, who are amongst the elite companions of our Holy Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, ila akhir. These are examples of people amongst many people who spent time with the Masumin. But their conclusion of that spending time with the Masumin was completely different than the others who spent time with them. For example, there are hundreds of people who met, thousands of people who met the Holy Prophet. But the examples that we attach to and see the impact of the Holy Prophet is sometimes restricted to these few personalities. Or for example, the people who spend time with Imam Ali alayhi salam. Many people spend time with him. But when we discuss the teachings of Imam Ali, we look at unique personalities like Kumayl ibn Ziyad, like Qambar, like Miqdad. All of these people who, for example, we look to are those who received a special type of spiritual guidance and special type of guidance simply by being in the company of the Imam that the others weren't able to achieve. This is known as hidayah amriyah, a source of guidance that Allah indicates through the spiritual means, that by simply through its exposure, you can find yourself in a state of guidance and proximity and attain proximity to Allah through it. One of the ways that we see this is when we go for ziyarat, and may Allah give us all tawfiq to go to the ziyarat of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam and be in their company. But at times you go for ziyarat and you don't know what to expect, you don't know what's going to happen, or you don't imagine that anything is going to happen, but then you go in front of the presence of this great personality, you go in the presence of this Imam, you approach his location, and immediately something inside of you changes. Or you begin to acknowledge, or ask people who have gone for ziyarat, or inshallah may Allah give you tawfiq to go, and pay attention to your own spiritual awareness. That as soon as I come to this place and I'm in this environment, something I feel different within me, in acknowledgement and awareness of spirituality, happens to begin and form in my heart. This change that happens, the Imam doesn't physically speak to us at that moment. The Imam is not available to us that we can sit down or even look at him and see him or hear his words at that moment. But the presence in front of that Imam impacts us, that it brings about a change within us. This is known as hidayah amriyah. And the same way that there is hidayah amriyah and guidance through the command of Allah, there is other type of misguidance that exists as well too, that Allah describes in Surah Nas. When Allah says, When we say in the Quran and we read, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ الْوَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ. That we seek the refuge with Allah from the evil whisperings that come to man. These evil whisperings, they're not a physical attribute. We don't see shaitan. We don't physically hear shaitan in our ear saying, oh, go and kick your brother. No. This is that impact of shaitan's present, which is why when we begin the recitation of Quran and it's recommended, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ar-rajim. I seek refuge from the accursed shaitan. What? We don't see a shaitan that we need to seek refuge from him. No, it's his impact on our spirit that we need to seek refuge with Allah with, to seek protection from the ability of that shaitan to approach us. This tells us that our spirit has the ability to be impacted both positively by good examples of Allah on this earth and by the bad and the evil that is present on this earth. So we see that Allah has given the status of being a source of guidance and support to the society and to humanity simply by its presence. One of the explanations of يَرِضَ اللَّهُ بِرِضَاهَا وَيَغْضَبَ اللَّهُ بِغَضَبِهَا, that Allah is pleased when Fatima is pleased and Allah is displeased and angry when Fatima is angry, is the demonstration that Sayyidah Fatima is the embodiment of the source of guidance of Allah on this earth, and she is the embodiment of a source of guidance known as Hidayah Amriya, that the presence and the attachment to Sayyidah Fatima is something by which we see and understand the desire and we attain guidance to attain proximity to Allah. And that what she dislikes is a guidance and understanding for us of what Allah dislikes. This is one of the depths of the explanation of why this statement is made, that through this Fatima, through this daughter of the Holy Prophet, we understand and we get closer to Allah because of her source as a spiritual source of guidance for us in humanity. Therefore, we see that this statement in its depth is teaching us that whether we look at Fatima bad'atum minni, that Fatima is a piece of me, that we see that in her are the attributes that are unique to Nabuwwat such that they allow the silsila and the source of imamat to continue. Therefore, the dignity and the honor of this personality and the dignity and the honor of this daughter of Rasulullah is something that needs to be preserved and discussed and analyzed. And the second aspect of why we should keep this personality and this individual constant in our discussions is that through her we will find a source of guidance to getting closer to Allah. We will find a source of guidance that will preserve us from the evil and the mistakes that we can make. And through her, we will have the pleasure of Allah. Therefore, the more we talk about Bibi Fatima, the more we discuss her life, the more we discuss the lessons from her, the more we try to get closer to this person, the greater our closeness to her increases, the greater the guidance and the love for Allah and the desire to perform what Allah wants from us increases within our hearts and personalities. Which is the second aspect of understanding. Why? Why discuss 3 sets of shahadat for Bibi Fatima? Why? Why have 3 dates? Because whenever we speak about her, whenever we discuss her, we will attain spiritual guidance to what Allah wants from us. We will attain a closeness to Allah through her presence with Allah. The third answer to this question, why discuss the shahadat of Bibi Fatima on 3 nights? Why make it a series of events? Is a very difficult to answer. It's to make sure that the oppression that was committed against the daughter of Rasulullah is not forgotten. When we look at history and we look at the age of Bibi Fatima, we see her age of shahadat at just 18 years. 18 years were spent on this life. that in that 18 years, how does an 18-year-old suddenly die? That certainly something must have occurred that caused her death. Something must have been the source of the difficulty that made the daughter of Rasulullah leave this world. It was completely unnatural for a person of her age to have suddenly died in this world. Therefore, the recounting of the shahadat and the martyrdom of Bibi Fatima is to make sure that, oh society, don't forget how that peace of Rasulullah, how that guidance of Allah and humanity was oppressed and lost in this world. This, the oppression against Bibi Fatima, is something that made even the A'imma weep because of what was done to Bibi Fatima. In famous narrations, it says that Imam Sadiq's body would be overcome by fever. They said, Ya Rasulullah, there is no sickness present in you. Why is your body overcome by fever? They would say that we would see in this condition of fever, Imam Sadiq, Abu Abdullah, would take buckets of water and pour them over his head. And as he would pour them over his head, he would call out, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. They said, Ya Rasulullah, why do we see you perform this action? He would reply, he says, the anger in my body over how they abused my mother Zahra makes my body physically burn, such that I have to cool it with water for what they did to my mother Zahra. In another famous narration, it says that Imam Rada's son, Imam al-Jawad, as a child, when he was in the presence of his father, suddenly began to cry in such a way as if he was in excruciating pain. At that time, remember, Imam Jawad was maybe 5 years of age. At 5, Imam Rada is separated from Imam al-Jawad and taken to Khurasan. So before the age of 5, Imam al-Jawad, it said, began to weep and cry in such a way, it was as if he was in physical pain. And Imam Rada turned to his son, Imam al-Jawad. He says, Oh Jawad, what has made you cry? Why do I see you in pain, my son? Child of 5. Imam al-Jawad replies, he says, Baba, I am remembering what they did to my mother Zahra. How did they abuse my mother Zahra? Ya Abba, I am so frustrated over what happened to my mother Zahra that it makes me weep even now. I ask Allah for the right to take retribution. I wish that Allah would give me the right. I would remove those who abused my mother Zahra. I would remove their bodies and burn them for what they did to her. Such was the extremity of the oppression on Bibi Fatima, that Bibi Fatima herself described. Subbat alayya masaib. Oh Baba, difficulties after you left have been poured on me such a way that if they were placed upon days, the days would become nights because of what they have done to me. Oh Bibi Zahra, what happened to you? Whether we look at the incident of the door, that the honor of that house, that Jibrail would not enter without permission, that house was the house that they came with fire, that they came with weapons. They created a hujum on the house of Sayyidah Zahra. They created a cry and a stir, a fearful environment on the house of Zahra until they pushed the door. And they pressed the daughter of Rasulullah between the door and the wall. One description writes and says that the feet of Zahra were no longer on the floor when she was pressed. Another says that we heard a sound as if it was breaking glass. The ribs of Zahra were broken between the door and the wall. The child of Zahra was killed in her womb. In this instance, they describe, where was Ali ibn Abi Talib? They said that Ali ibn Abi Talib, upon hearing of what was happening, came running to the front of the door and threw the people from the front of the door. Imam Ali had been told by Rasulullah that, oh Ali, after me, great difficulties will befall you, but you must remain patient. You do not have my permission to take out your sword. Amir al-Mu'mineen, in this condition, it said, threw those enemies from the door of the house of Bibi Fatima on their faces and injured them. But then he called out, had it not been the patience that I have been commanded to, I would today have shown you the strength of my arms that pulled the doors of Khaybar. They said that Ali ibn Abi Talib, because the enemies knew that Ali could not reply, they put a rope around his neck and dragged him through the streets. That Bibi Fatima, upon seeing this, forgot her own wounds and came after to the defense of Imam Ali. Imam Hassan narrates, he says, I saw my mother in the streets of Medina going after my father to defend him, until eventually they came and they struck my mother, to where it was said that Bibi Fatima called out in the streets of Medina, I am no longer asking you to let Ali go. I am asking you not to hit me in the streets of Medina. There are two personalities, there are two individuals who at the time of their burial were in such difficulty that they say that the one burying them found himself embarrassed by this condition in which the person was buried. One of them is Sayyidah Sakina, that Bibi Sakina was the amana of Imam al-Hussein left with Imam Zainul Abidin. That when Imam Zainul Abidin had to bury Bibi Sakina, he was embarrassed that, Baba, you left my sister with me, and she was fine and healthy. But Baba, when I return Sakina to you, her ears have been ripped. Her cheeks are marked with bruises. Her body is burned from the fire of the tents. Baba, forgive me for how I have returned your amana to you. The other person who went through great difficulty at the time of burial and went through a state which we would say that maybe he was embarrassed by it was Imam Ali alayhi salam. That, oh Rasulullah, you left me Fatima. You left me a part of you. When you left her, her eye was not injured. Her ribs were not broken. Her Mohsin had not been killed. Oh Rasulullah, how difficult for me to return Fatima to you. And her eye has been injured, her face has been struck, her ribs have been broken, and her Mohsin has been killed. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. With tears in our eyes, we raise our hands. ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز العجل الأكرم يا الله 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 يا محمود بحق محمد يا أعلى بحق علي يا فاطر السماوات والأرض بحق فاطمة يا محسن بحق الحسن يا قديم الأحسان بحق الحسين. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Ya Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Oh Allah, give us the tawfiq to learn from the example of Sayyidah Zahra and the children of Sayyidah Zahra. Ya Allah, the mu'mineen, the Muslimeen, our family members, and all the people of this world who are suffering through this waba and through this difficulty. Ya Allah, give safety and health and aman to all the people wherever they may be. Ya Allah, amongst our families and amongst our community and amongst the mu'mineen or those who are sick, Ya Allah, give shafa'a kamil to all those of the mu'mineen who are in difficulty. Ya Allah, we have gathered before you with hajat, bawasilat Zahra, and the children of Sayyidah Zahra, and the father of Sayyidah Zahra, and the husband of Sayyidah Zahra. Ya Allah, fulfill our hajat, remove the difficulties from us, and give us husn al-aqibah. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our children from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman, and entitle us to the shifa of Imam al-Hussein in dunya and in akhirah. رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. Inshallah, please remember all of the marhumeen and the mu'mineen who are in need of dua, and one more Fatiha for them, khususan Sayyid Sajidi, and the marhumeen of our community and of all of our brothers and sisters. Bismillah ar-Rahman.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. These are some of powerful lessons for us all. I personally gained some valuable understanding from your lecture. Again, appreciate it immensely.
inshallah may Allah accept.
May Allah bless you, Sheikh. Ya Zahra.
inshallah. Ya Zahra. في امان الله.